An elderly retiree noticed a little girl shivering in the rain, cold and hungry, and immediately offered help without hesitation. The sound of rain against the windows of Detective Graham's modest apartment filled the night, a rhythmic yet somber melody that mirrored his lonely existence. Graham, a grizzled investigator in his late 50s, was seated in his worn-out armchair, staring at a stack of unsolved case files. His gray hair and tired eyes told the story of a man who had seen too much of the world's darkness. A hesitant knock at the door startled him, breaking the monotonous drumming of the rain. Frowning, Graham heaved himself up, his knees creaking in protest, and made his way to the door. The soft yellow glow of the hallway light revealed a drenched teenage girl, shivering as she stood in the rain. Her long, dark hair clung to her face, and her thin frame trembled violently. "Please, help me," she whispered, her voice almost lost in the storm's roar. "My name is Lily. I have nowhere to go." For a moment, Graham hesitated. His years as a detective had taught him to be cautious, yet something about her wide, desperate eyes struck a chord. He stepped aside, silently inviting her in. Lily entered tentatively, leaving a trail of water on the wooden floor. Her clothes were soaked, clinging to her slender frame, and Graham noticed faint bruises on her arms. She looked like someone running from a nightmare. Without a word, he fetched a blanket from the closet and draped it around her shoulders. The fabric seemed to swallow her as she pulled it tightly around herself. "You're safe here," Graham said gruffly, guiding her to sit on the couch. "Let me get you something warm, then we'll talk." As the detective moved to the kitchen, Lily's eyes darted around the apartment. The space was sparse, dominated by shelves of books and files. On the desk by the window sat a laptop, its screen glowing faintly. Her gaze lingered on a locked drawer. Graham returned with a steaming mug of tea, setting it on the coffee table. He retrieved a first aid kit and began tending to a cut on her forehead. She flinched at his touch, her green eyes darting away. "You don't have to tell me everything now," he said, his voice softer this time. "But if someone's after you, I need to know." Tears welled up in her eyes. "I just need a place to stay. For tonight, I'll leave tomorrow, I promise." Graham nodded, recognizing the fear in her voice. "The couch is yours. I'll be in the next room if you need anything." As Graham disappeared into his bedroom, Lily remained on the couch, the blanket still wrapped tightly around her. But as the hours ticked by and the rain continued to fall, she moved with a quiet precision. Her fingers worked swiftly, opening drawers and rifling through papers. She paused when she reached the locked drawer, a small smile crossing her lips. From her pocket, she produced a thin piece of wire and worked it into the lock. After a few seconds, the drawer clicked open. Inside was a file marked with a red tab. She pulled it out, her heart racing as she scanned its contents. The name Harold Bishop stood out, a name she knew too well. Sliding the file into her bag, Lily glanced toward Graham's closed bedroom door. She hesitated for a moment, guilt flickering across her face, before slipping out of the apartment and into the rainy night. Graham awoke to the sound of his alarm and the realization that something was off. The living room was eerily quiet. When he stepped out of his bedroom, he found the couch empty and the blanket neatly folded. Papers were scattered across his desk, and the locked drawer was slightly ajar. "No," he muttered, rushing to the desk. His hands trembled as he sorted through the files, finding one conspicuously missing. Among the mess, a photograph had fallen to the floor. He picked it up, his breath catching in his throat. The picture showed Lily, younger and smiling, standing beside a man whose face haunted Graham's nightmares. Harold Bishop, the serial killer he had spent years hunting but had never caught. Graham's mind raced as he pieced together the night's events. Lily wasn't just a scared runaway. She was connected to Bishop. But how? And why had she taken the file? The rain had stopped, but the storm in Graham's chest was just beginning. Morning light seeped through the blinds, casting long shadows in Detective Graham's apartment. The remnants of the previous night's chaos were scattered around. Open drawers, loose papers, and a sense of betrayal that clung to the air. Graham paced the room, his mind a whirl of unanswered questions. The photograph he found? A young Lily with Harold Bishop sat on his desk, a silent reminder of his failure to see the truth. A sharp ring from the phone broke his thoughts. He picked it up, his voice gruff. "Graham?" "Chris," said Tom, his younger partner, "you need to come down to Miller's place. It's bad, and it's tied to your old case. I think you'll want to see this." "I'm on my way." Graham hung up, grabbed his coat, and glanced one last time at the photo before heading out. The sight of Bishop's sinister grin beside Lily's innocent smile sent a chill down his spine. Graham arrived at the crime scene, a suburban house now crawling with police activity. Yellow tape stretched across the driveway, and the low hum of murmured voices filled the air. As he stepped inside, Tom met him with a grim expression. "It's Miller," Tom said, leading Graham further into the house. "Retired 5 years ago. Worked with you on the Bishop case." Graham's stomach sank. He hadn't seen Miller in years, but the man's obsession with Bishop was well known. As they entered the study, Graham was struck by the sight on the wall. Written in bold red letters were the words, "The daughter reaps the sins of the father. The game continues, detective." The message loomed over a chaotic room. Newspaper clippings, photographs, and notes about the Bishop case were pinned to the walls, Miller's personal investigation spiraling in every direction. In the center of it all, Miller lay slumped over his desk, his face pale and lifeless. Graham's jaw tightened as he took in the scene. He noticed details others might have missed. The disarray of papers suggested a struggle, yet certain items, a map with red circles, a notebook open to a specific page, seemed deliberately left in place. His eyes fell on a small silver pendant lying on the desk. It was shaped like a bird, and recognition struck him immediately. Lily had been wearing the exact same pendant. "She was here," he muttered under his breath. Tom frowned. "What was that?" "Nothing." Graham pocketed the pendant. "What else do we know?" Tom hesitated. "A neighbor reported seeing a teenage girl leave the house early this morning. Description matches the girl you mentioned picking up last night." Graham's mind raced. Why would Lily come here? What was her connection to Miller? And why leave a message that tied her so directly to Bishop? Back at the station, Graham locked himself in his office. The pendant sat on his desk, its delicate design at odds with the darkness of the situation. He combed through Lily's file again, tracing her fragmented past. Born to a single mother, she had gone missing at 8 years old following her mother's suspicious death. Her father, listed as Harold Bishop, had vanished the same day. The phone on his desk buzzed, pulling him from his thoughts. "Graham." I did some digging." Tom's voice crackled through the line. "Miller wasn't just looking into Bishop. He had a theory, one he never shared with the department. He believed Bishop wasn't working alone. He thought there was an accomplice." The revelation sent a chill through Graham. An accomplice? His thoughts immediately turned to Lily. Was she an accomplice, a pawn, or something else entirely? "Send me everything Miller had on that theory," Graham said, his voice taut. "Will do." "Oh, and Chris," Tom added, hesitating, "be careful. If this girl is mixed up in it—" "I know." Graham hung up, his fingers drumming on the desk. He couldn't shake the feeling that Lily's arrival at his apartment hadn't been coincidence. She wanted something from him, but what? Hours later, Graham received a knock at his door. A young officer handed him a folder. This just came in, security footage from a camera near Miller's house. Graham flipped through the images until he found what he was looking for, a grainy shot of Lily exiting Miller's front door, the stolen file clutched in her arms. Her face was set in determination, a far cry from the frightened girl he had taken in the night before. She was running, but not aimlessly. She had a plan. The final image caught his eye. A shadowy figure stood across the street, watching as Lily disappeared into the night. Graham leaned closer, his gut twisting. The man was unmistakably Harold Bishop. "She's leading me to him," Graham whispered, realization dawning. But why? He knew one thing for certain. If Lily was heading toward Bishop, she was walking into unimaginable danger. Graham grabbed his coat and gun, his resolve hardening. He wouldn't let her face it alone. As he stepped into the night, the rain began again, its rhythmic patter on the pavement echoing his racing heartbeat. Somewhere out there, Lily was on the move, and Harold Bishop was waiting. Rain poured in sheets as Graham maneuvered through the city streets, his wipers struggling to keep the windshield clear. The unease in his chest grew with every passing second. Lily was a puzzle, and every new piece deepened the mystery. If she was working against her files, why steal his files? If she wasn't, why risk exposing herself at Miller's house? The phone on the seat next to him buzzed, jolting him from his thoughts. He glanced at the screen. It was Tom. "Chris," Tom said urgently, "we've got a lead on Lily. Traffic cameras caught her heading east toward the old industrial district. That place is a labyrinth." "Send me the exact location," Graham replied, gripping the wheel tighter. "Be careful, Chris. If Bishop's involved, you're walking into a trap." "I know," Graham muttered, ending the call. His jaw tightened as he veered onto an empty street, the desolation of the industrial district looming ahead. The rain had turned the dirt roads into a slick, muddy mess. Graham parked his car at the edge of an abandoned warehouse, its rusted exterior and broken windows casting eerie shadows in the moonlight. The place reeked of decay and abandonment, yet there was a distinct sense of being watched. He approached cautiously, his gun drawn, each step a calculated move. The sound of the rain was deafening, masking any potential noise from within. Graham pushed open the warehouse door, the rusty hinges creaking loudly in protest. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the faint scent of mildew. Broken machinery and crates were strewn about, and the dim light from a single hanging bulb cast long, flickering shadows. Graham's sharp eyes scanned the space, his instincts screaming that something was off. "Detective?" A voice called softly from the darkness, making him whip around, gun raised. Lily stepped into view, her clothes soaked and her face pale but determined. She held the stolen file tightly against her chest. Her green eyes met his with a mix of defiance and desperation. "What the hell are you doing here?" Graham growled, lowering his weapon slightly. "Do you have any idea how much danger you're in?" "I know exactly what I'm doing," Lily shot back. "I came here to finish this, to end what my father started." "You think you can take him down alone?" Graham's voice was laced with frustration. "You don't even know how far his network reaches." Lily stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "That's why I need you. He's planning something bigger than anything he's done before. It's not just about me or his victims anymore. He wants to send a message to the entire city, and if we don't stop him tonight, it'll be too late." Graham studied her face, the fear and resolve etched into her features. Despite everything, she was just a kid. A kid trying to fight a monster she could never fully understand. "What's his plan, Lily?" Graham asked, his voice softer now. Lily hesitated, her grip on the file tightening. "A coordinated attack," she finally said. He's targeting key locations across the city, places where people gather, where they feel safe. He wants chaos, fear, and control. And he's using his network to make it happen. Graham's stomach churned at the thought. How do you know all this? Lily's face darkened. Because he told me. Before I ran, he laid out his plans like a proud parent showing off a masterpiece. He wanted me to be part of it, to carry on his legacy. Her voice wavered, but she quickly steadied herself. Oh, I couldn't let that happen. Before Graham could respond, the faint sound of footsteps echoed from deeper within the warehouse. Both of them froze, their eyes locking in silent understanding. "Eehow," she said. Lily whispered, her face going pale. The footsteps grew louder, accompanied by the faint hum of an old generator sparking to life. The dim warehouse flickered with harsh artificial light, revealing more of its maze-like interior. Graham gestured for Lily to stay behind him as he crept toward the sound, his gun drawn and his senses on high alert. Suddenly, a shadow darted across the far wall, and Graham's finger twitched on the trigger. "Show yourself," he barked. A slow, deliberate clap echoed through the space. Harold Bishop emerged from the shadows, his presence commanding and sinister. He was a tall man with sharp features, his dark eyes gleaming with a chilling mix of intelligence and madness. His voice was smooth, almost mocking. "Detective Graham," Bishop said, spreading his arms theatrically. "I must admit I didn't expect you to be here. But then again, you've always been persistent, a trait I admire, truly." "Drop the act, Bishop," Graham snapped. "This ends tonight." Bishop chuckled, the sound cold and unnerving. "You've been chasing me for years, and yet here we are. Do you really think it's that simple?" Lily stepped forward, her voice trembling but defiant. "It is that simple. You don't get to do this anymore. I won't let you." Bishop's gaze shifted to her, his smile fading. My dear Lily. Still so naive, so ungrateful. After everything I've taught you, you choose to side with him?" He gestured dismissively at Graham. "I chose to be better than you," Lily shot back, "and I'll stop you no matter what it takes." Bishop's eyes narrowed, his composure cracking. "You think you're strong enough to defy me? You're nothing without me, Lily. Everything you are, I made you." As the tension in the room reached a breaking point, Graham noticed Bishop subtly reaching for something behind his back. Without hesitation, Graham fired a warning shot, the bullet grazing the edge of a crate and sending splinters flying. "Don't move, Bishop," Graham barked. Bishop froze, his smile returning. "Careful, detective. You wouldn't want to provoke me." Suddenly, the warehouse lights flickered and dimmed, plunging the room into partial darkness. The hum of the generator faltered, and the shadows seemed to close in around them. Graham's grip tightened on his gun, his heart pounding. Bishop's voice echoed through the darkness. "You've already lost, detective. The clock is ticking, and you don't even know where to look." Graham turned to Lily, his voice urgent. "Is there another way out of here? We need to move, now." Lily nodded, her face pale but determined. "This way, but we'll have to be fast." Together, they bolted toward a side exit, the sound of Bishop's laughter echoing behind them like a haunting melody. The game had just begun, and the stakes were higher than ever. The night air was sharp and cold as Graham and Lily climbed the final flight of stairs leading to the rooftop. Every step echoed like a drumbeat, matching the relentless countdown in their minds. Lily clutched the stolen files tightly, her face a mask of grim determination. Graham followed close behind, his gun drawn, his senses hyper-alift. The rooftop door creaked as they pushed it open, revealing a sprawling view of the city bathed in moonlight. At the center of the rooftop stood Harold Bishop, his silhouette imposing against the skyline. A table beside him held a device with blinking lights and an ominous timer that ticked closer to 0 with every second. "You made it," Bishop said smoothly, turning to face them. "I must admit, I'm impressed. Few have the courage or the foolishness to come this far." "Step away from the device, Bishop," Graham ordered, his voice firm. "This ends now." The Bishop laughed, a sound both chilling and hollow. "Ends? Oh, Detective, you misunderstand. This is only the beginning." Lily stepped forward, her hands trembling but her voice steady. "You don't have to do this, Dad. It doesn't have to end this way." Bishop's smile faltered for a brief moment, but his eyes remained cold. "Ah, Lily, always the sentimental one. I trained you better than this." "You didn't train me. You tried to break me," Lily shot back. "But you failed. I'm not your puppet anymore." Graham kept his gun trained on Bishop, his mind racing. The timer on the device read 5:47 and ticking. If they didn't act soon, the consequences would be catastrophic. "Bishop," Graham said, his tone cutting through the tension. "You think you're in control, but look around. The police know where you are. Your plan is falling apart." Bishop's smile widened, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You think I care about the police? They're nothing but pawns in a game far beyond their understanding. This city will remember me as the man who brought it to its knees." The timer ticked to 4:59, and Graham saw Lily's resolve harden. She stepped closer to the device, her movements calculated. Bishop noticed and raised his hand, revealing a small remote. "Ah!" he warned. One wrong move, and the fireworks begin early. Lily froze, her eyes darting to Graham. He gave her a subtle nod, his mind already working on a plan. "You've spent your whole life trying to control people, haven't you?" Graham said, his voice steady. "But deep down, you're just a scared little man hiding behind your games." Bishop's expression darkened, his composure cracking. "You don't know anything about me, Detective. I've built empires, shaped destinies." "You've destroyed lives," Lily interrupted, her voice trembling with emotion, "including mine, but not anymore." In one swift motion, she reached into her jacket and pulled out a small pistol Graham hadn't realized she had. She pointed it directly at Bishop, her hand steady. "Step away from the device," she said firmly. "Now." Bishop hesitated, his eyes narrowing as he studied his daughter. The tension on the rooftop was suffocating, the sound of the timers beeping the only thing breaking the silence. "You won't shoot me," Bishop said, taking a step closer to her. "You don't have it in you." Lily's grip on the gun tightened, her knuckles white. "Don't test me." Graham's voice cut through the standoff. "Lily, wait. We can do this without bloodshed." "No, we can't," Lily said, her voice breaking. "He'll never stop. You know that." The timer ticked to 3:30, and the stakes grew impossibly higher. Graham knew they had only moments to act, but the decision wasn't his to make. Bishop took another step toward Lily, his hands raised in mock surrender. "Come on, Lily. You're my daughter, my legacy. Let's end this charade and start over. Together." Lily's face twisted in anguish, her gun trembling slightly. "I'm nothing like you." Bishop smirked, sensing her hesitation. "You are. You always have been." The timer ticked to 2:45. Graham saw his opportunity and lunged toward the device, aiming to disarm it. Bishop reacted instantly, dropping the remote and pulling a knife from his belt. He turned toward Graham, but Lily was faster. A gunshot rang out, shattering the night's silence. Bishop stumbled, clutching his shoulder as blood seeped through his shirt. He glared at Lily, his face a mixture of rage and disbelief. "You shot me," he spat, his voice filled with venom. "I warned you." Lily said, her voice firm, despite the tears streaming down her face. The timer ticked to 1:30, and Graham worked furiously to disable the device. "Lily, I need you over here, now." Lily hesitated, her gun still trained on her father. Bishop slumped to his knees, his smirk returning despite his injury. "You think this changes anything?" Bishop sneered. "Even if you stop this, there will always be another plan, another game." "Not if we stop you here," Lily said, turning her back on him and rushing to help Graham. Together, they managed to deactivate the device with only seconds to spare. The timer froze at 0:07 and an eerie silence settled over the rooftop. Bishop used the distraction to lunge for the remote, but Graham was ready. He delivered a swift kick, sending the remote flying across the rooftop. Bishop collapsed, his strength finally failing him. Police sirens echoed in the distance, growing louder by the second. Graham turned to Lily, his face a mixture of relief and exhaustion. "It's over," he said softly. Lily looked at her father, broken and defeated on the ground. "It's over for him," she said, "but not for me." As the police swarmed the rooftop, Bishop was taken into custody, his threats and curses falling on deaf ears. Lily stood beside Graham, her hands trembling, but her heart lighter than it had been in years. For the first time in her life, she felt free. The city was quiet as the first rays of dawn broke over the skyline, bathing the streets in a soft golden light. Graham and Lily stood at the rooftop's edge, watching as police officers secured the scene below. The weight of the night's events hung heavy in the air, but there was also an undeniable sense of closure. "You did it," Graham said, his voice low and steady. "You stopped them." Lily didn't respond immediately. Her green eyes were fixed on the horizon, a mixture of relief and sadness reflected in them. "We stopped him," she said finally, her voice trembling. "But it doesn't erase what he's done." The next few days passed in a blur of interrogations, legal proceedings, and media coverage. Harold Bishop was charged with numerous crimes, and his network of accomplices began to unravel under the weight of the evidence Lily and Graham had gathered. Lily was taken into custody temporarily for her involvement in the events leading up to her father's capture. Graham fought tirelessly to defend her, presenting her as a victim of Harold's manipulation rather than an accomplice. "She risked everything to stop him," Graham argued during a tense hearing. "If not for her, countless lives would have been lost. She deserves a chance to build a life free from his shadow." Weeks turned into months, and the truth finally prevailed. Lily was cleared of all charges, her role in dismantling her father's operation recognized as an act of bravery rather than complicity. On the day of her release, Graham was waiting for her outside the courthouse. As she stepped through the doors, Lily froze for a moment, her eyes scanning the crowd. Then she saw him, standing tall in his worn trench coat, a small, proud smile on his face. She walked toward him, each step feeling heavier than the last. "So where, she said, stopping a few feet away. "What now?" Graham chuckled softly. "That's up to you. But if you're interested, I could use a partner." 6 months later, the leaves had turned to shades of gold and crimson, painting the city in the colors of autumn. Lily had moved into a small apartment near Graham's, her new life a stark contrast to the one she'd left behind. She spent her days working alongside Graham, assisting him with cases and learning the ropes of investigative work. Her sharp instincts and unique perspective made her an invaluable asset, and Graham often marveled at how quickly she had adapted. One crisp autumn afternoon, they sat on Graham's porch, steaming cups of coffee in hand. The air was filled with the faint rustle of leaves and the distant laughter of children playing in the park. "You know," Lily said, breaking the comfortable silence, "I never thought I'd find peace after everything that happened." Graham glanced at her, his expression thoughtful. "Peace isn't something you find, Lily. It's something you build. and you've been building it every day." Lily looked down at her coffee, her fingers tracing the rim of the cup. "I still think about him sometimes," she admitted. "About what he made me, what he wanted me to become." "You're not him," Graham said firmly. "You made your choice, and it was the right one. That's what defines you, not him." Lily smiled faintly, the weight in her chest feeling a little lighter. "You've been like a father to me, Graham. I don't know where I'd be without you." Graham's expression softened, and he reached out to place a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "And you've been like a daughter to me, Lily. I'm proud of the person you've become." As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, the two of them sat in companionable silence, the bond between them stronger than ever. The city buzzed with life around them, but for Graham and Lily, this moment was theirs, a testament to resilience, redemption, and the power of choosing a different path. They didn't know what challenges the future would bring, but they knew one thing for certain: they would face them together.